You wake up and go to sleep again. You wake up, then go to sleep. Maybe you have some food in between. Maybe a shower. Days start to blur together. Time loses all meaning. You continue to scroll on your phone and spend too much time online. But even though you know this, and you've heard it about 1,000 times, probably more, you just can't stop. Every day, you hear headlines about draconian police state laws being introduced, and people in power abusing their positions, hurting the innocent, silencing dissent, committing atrocities against humanity. You just can't. You can't get up. You can't stop and think about it. You are barely keeping yourself alive, and while you're alive, God knows you're not well. The same question echoes through your mind, almost as if a spark of resistance is trying to escape it. Why can't I do anything? Why can't I stand up for myself? Why can't I just live like a normal person? I've watched so many videos on what I need to do to better my life. I have literal endless information on the methodology, the logic behind it, what pitfalls I should look out for, and pro tips, yet I can't do anything. Your body feels as heavy as stone, and it might as well be after your very being has been calcified, as if you're a victim of Medusa's gaze. As if you're having sleep paralysis, but you're fully awake, and you have control over your body, yet the control is an illusion. Because every time you attempt to do something, you go blank. All this time, trying to escape from the Matrix, well, you can't even escape from yourself, and that's the worst part. No matter where you are, your body, your prison, follows you. The source of your problems follows you. You can't change the mind you were given, and now you have to solve a labyrinth nobody has ever completed before. Probably the biggest enemy of our generation. No, one of the biggest enemies of humanity. Inaction. So, I hope you didn't find the intro relatable this time. I wouldn't want to wish this fate upon anyone outside of my list. But if you did, welcome to the team, buddy. Because plot twist, or maybe not since it takes me so long to make videos, I suffer from executive dysfunction. Of course, this is not a clinical diagnosis, but I just can't do stuff, okay? That's the best way to put it. The inability to take action in spite of the desire to do so. Now, you might already be thinking to yourself, but wait a minute, if you can't do stuff, how did you upload this video? And how did you write the script for it? And that's going to be our first point. How can I have executive dysfunction if I can still do something? And the best way I'd put it is a broken clock is right twice a day. Doesn't make it any less broken. Sometimes, either through sheer willpower or determination, a person who struggles to put their thoughts into action can succeed in finishing the fight victoriously, but it often comes at a great emotional and psychological toll that might leave you very exhausted afterwards, and other people only get to see the results of your success. So when you fail to fight off your internal paralysis demon, you just end up wasting a day and the world goes on without you. Besides, depending on your obligations, you can afford to lose your internal battles a couple of times. So as long as you're hitting your quotas at work, for example, the struggle you go through is invisible. And I believe this only makes the paralysis worse. When I mention this internal battle and fight, I'm being serious. It feels like you're actively battling against something inside your brain, which you might not even be quite sure what it is, just so you can tidy up your room. A Herculean effort for a meaningless, mundane task. At this point, young people have almost become infamous for their ability to complain about the issues of the modern world. Gen Z can tell you exactly what's wrong with capitalism and its exploitation of workers worldwide, or what's wrong with too much social media consumption, or the innate power structures present in our society that were built specifically for profit maximization instead of making the life of the average person better. Trump does something dumb? Here's why that's dumb. Here's why this is like that, and like this, and I get it. I'm completely guilty of this myself. We have a great degree of introspection and reflecting upon the current state of the world. And I think we can all see and agree that some things need to change, and somebody has to do something. But the hyper-awareness of our problems alone doesn't actually lead us to tangible solutions. Because for anything to change and or happen at all, you have to do something. And that something might be more than just writing about the problem. I mean active, tangible actions that have a direct impact on the world. And here lies the cruel paradox of our generation. We are aware of the systemic failures of the systems we live in, but most of us are too weak to even get out of bed or clean our room. How can you make a movement if you can't even make your own bed? And I can already see people complaining about how this is just snowflake behavior and that we're too lazy to do anything substantial, but I don't think that's the case at all. I think the reason why Gen Z can't do anything a lot of the time lies in executive dysfunction. And don't get me wrong, we are probably being put into this state on purpose. The 9-to-5 working culture, which is standard across many different countries in the world, often leaves people feeling completely drained, and most of all, stressed. They spend all of their energy on trying to survive the rat race of everyday life, so they can end up spending all of their free time recovering, just so they can do their stupid jobs again. It's a vicious cycle that is difficult to break out of, but not impossible, in more ways than one. First, let's look at our situation. Our workload has actually secretly increased while keeping the veneer of working for only 40 hours a week. You still need to commute to work, which is objectively more hours added to your workload, and then you are supposed to do the dishes, fold your laundry, fatten the beast, etc. This is actually partially because of loneliness, because back then, when the 40 hours a week system was conceptualized, only the man of the family had to work 40 hours a week to support the family, while the wife took care of the home. If you lived alone, then you had more disposable income available. There were even financial terms like dinks, meaning double income no kids, to signal a degree of wealth and prosperity. A lot of people are now dinks, but they literally can't afford a kid. And if you have a minimum wage job, you likely have to share an apartment with someone, since rent prices are insanely high. We are not one-man armies. Humans always lived in communities, and our lives are much easier in a communal setting. But because of the extreme alienation due to capitalism and other factors like social media replacing physical meetups and relationships, our lives are extremely energy intensive now. You are not broken for feeling burnt out or finding yourself unable to partake in your hobbies and passions. This is a mass systemic failure occurring right in front of our eyes. So, logically, you might come to the conclusion that the system needs to be destroyed. And you're right, something needs to be done. But why won't anyone do it? Well, one of the reasons is something known as the bystander paradox. I think this paradox is a huge reason as to why people aren't doing much, even though their own lives might be at stake. They think that someone's gonna snap and free them eventually, so they might as well try to get themselves as comfortable as possible while they wait for rescue to arrive. The bystander's paradox gets rid of any and all possibilities of taking action, because instead, you're hoping for a hero who will never come. Everybody's thinking that someone's gotta do something. You know, the government with the Stein files has been really overstepping their censorship, for example. Or these new EU regulations are really getting out of hand. Life just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. There's a lot of jokes that are about doing it. And no, I don't mean the hanky-panky. I mean doing the thing people have historically done when there was a massive wealth inequality, for example. And Gen Z praises and adores anybody who actually takes action. Like our favorite Nintendo character, Luigi, for example. He's beloved for a reason. A lot of people agree with his sentiment and what needs to be done to keep the people who have too much wealth and power in check. For example, the healthcare system in America genuinely is terrible, and I think everyone who isn't an evil sociopath can agree that it needs to change, sooner rather than later. And the longer we postpone changes to this exploitative system, the longer it's going to harm people and continue the collective suffering. 64,000 people in the US ended up passing away from insufficient healthcare coverage or not being able to pay the exorbitant fees associated with it in a year. I mean, come on, $5,000 for an ambulance ride? If your greed is actively harming people to the point of ending their life, then sucking up the ghosts like Luigi did just makes sense. Man, just look at how much money these ghosts hide in their pockets. Luigi can afford his own mansion just by beating their money out of them. Look, they don't even know what to do with their wealth, so they just put it into useless crap. I can't wait for Luigi's Mansion 4, because we don't need a hero. We need an army of Luigis to enact lasting change in the system. It doesn't start with Superman. It starts with us. If we want to do anything to make the world a better place, we have to look inwards and do something, even if it's small, because let's be honest, not everyone can just be a Luigi and do something of that scale. If we collectively contribute towards a better world, not just as individuals, but as an ocean of small decision makers, it really adds up. But you can't change the world if you can't even change your bed. As I said, So, let's talk about exactly why we can't even do the most simple tasks sometimes. There is a myriad of reasons for executive dysfunction. It can be related to ADHD with analysis paralysis, depression, anxiety, perfectionism, autism, brain injuries, too much stress, sleep deprivation, overstimulation, lethargy, and a combination of physical illnesses and chronic conditions which are taking an additional toll on your mental health. There are so many reasons and things that cause executive dysfunction to occur that oftentimes these conditions are a combination of one another. I mean, come on. The only people who aren't overly stressed and have a sense of anxiety about current events in the future are rich people detached from the world as a whole. We might all have our own reasons for why we feel and act the way we do, but fact is, this is a massive overarching issue, and we all understand that something has to be done about it, but sadly, we are mostly responsible for saving ourselves. It's sad because I'm the idiot who's causing the issues in a way, and that same idiot is supposed to save me. And this reality, in turn, stresses you out even more, because now, on top of all the tasks you had before, and all the things you wanted to do earlier, you also have to somehow fix this issue first, before you can do everything else that you have to do. And psychologically, this is just adding another issue onto a mountain of issues you already have, so you get further stuck in the cycle. The cycle gets even worse because your problem is the inability to start and finish a process. And to cure your inability to start and finish a task, you must start and finish the task of getting rid of your executive dysfunction. Do you see the circle of insanity here? This crap right here has been keeping me prisoner for so long. It's such a difficult paradox which you can't think your way out of. But thinking is one of the few things I'm still able to do. So the solution to this problem, from a logical standpoint, can literally seem impossible. And in my opinion, this is the biggest trap, which, mind you, also makes you more stressed out. It's a circle within a circle within a circle. It's a problem so complex that I struggle to write anything about it for a very, very long time. But I think I understand what the solution looks like. Let me explain. In mathematics, there exists also a paradox which logically can't be solved through theory alone. But action proves that it's possible. It's about a tortoise and a runner. Let's call him Achilles. Both Achilles and Terence the tortoise are racing against each other. And to compensate for the runner's superior speed, the tortoise is given a head start, let's say 60 meters. After the tortoise has reached 60 meters into the race, Achilles starts running, and he is definitely faster than Terence the tortoise. But for every bit of distance the runner travels, the tortoise also travels a bit farther. Every single time Achilles reaches the point where the tortoise was, the tortoise has traveled an infinitesimal amount farther, so Achilles never quite reaches the tortoise. We know that in reality, the tortoise gets absolutely dunked on by Achilles, in spite of the paradox. This is known as Zeno's paradox, the illusion of motion. I feel like executive dysfunction boils down to this paradox, but in your mind. You can break down a process into an infinitely small number of checkpoints, which you have to reach before you quote-unquote finish the task. Without realizing, our brains might be applying this logic to ourselves, where it overthinks the infinitesimally small checkpoints of the process and how hard it is to reach them. Then, it comes to the ill-fitted conclusion that the problem is infinite in nature, and that we should just give up and do nothing instead. Basically, it's a Zeno's paradox of the mind, but the good news is that both of these paradoxes are illusions. Clearly, tortoises are outrun, and tasks can be done. The issue is that breaking the illusion is really difficult, and oftentimes, it also doesn't make sense. Especially for someone who is neurodivergent, for example, and needs to subdivide smaller tasks which seem obvious to a neurotypical person. And of course, its second biggest problem are its recursive qualities. The problems that are caused by this type of thinking get amplified and strengthened by the same problem. It's like putting two walkie-talkies next to each other and letting them go up in pitch higher and higher until it hurts your ears, and all of these loops and recursions are so confusing to navigate. Even when I was writing about this in the script, it was tripping me up, so I hope I'm being clear here. You're stressed that you can't do anything, so you don't do anything about you being stressed, and that makes you even more stressed, etc. Thought loops are already naturally dangerous, because it keeps your mental wounds always fresh, but when a thought loop gets stronger every time it gets repeated, here's what you need to do. Empty your mind. Completely. Do the human equivalent of turning it off and on again. Cease all thoughts and focus on the calm and serene. The bad thoughts can't hurt you when you aren't thinking about them. So we need to find a way to do exactly that. Because think about it, although not like you have a choice. All of our actions come from thoughts, and if you have a desire to put a thought into action, but you can't, there's probably a reason for it. Another thought. Like, I'll just do it later, for example. Seems innocent enough, but this is the destroyer of productivity, because later doesn't exist. We only live in the now. It's a genius trick by our brains to get us to do nothing, but it's a trick nonetheless. And if you observe your own behavior and then ask yourself, why don't you just do it now? Or how can you be so sure that you'll actually follow through? Then you'll finally get some answers as to what is happening inside your mind. And you can dismantle basically any excuse like this, but as I said before, to properly observe oneself from an internal perspective and be able to ask accurate questions, we have to calm our mind. But how do we do that? For me, personally, frequencies and hemisphere sync audios have helped me empty my mind. And here's the key. You have to keep your mind calm, at least for a bit. And the best way I could explain it is by imagining your thoughts were water, and letting each thought flow into a river that exists in your mind. Let it come and go, slowly, flowing from your subconscious back into the void. Thought comes in, thought comes out. Focus on your breathing, if that helps you, or a calming mental image, like rain falling. We want to create an environment in which you can observe your bad thoughts clearly, but you don't have to engage with them, because engagement is a choice. Your choice. We cannot stop our thoughts from happening. This is just the reality. Bad thoughts will continuously enter our minds throughout our time alive. But if you simply view them as nothing more than thoughts, you can ignore them. Think about it. How often do you get an idea in your head that's just like, jump out the window, and you don't act on it? Or throw this hot coffee at your boss's face? We get all sorts of thoughts, and we have the power to ignore them, including the very same thoughts that cause you to be paralyzed. And the emptying your mind meditation is, in my opinion, an amazing way to just get a clear head, so you can see your thoughts in the first place. Because if you're anything like me, there's a constant free jazz orchestra going on with 3 overlapped songs playing and memes popping up for every situation. It's probably why my videos look the way they do. It's actually how I think. Well, either way, you gotta remove the clutter. But I know that people with ED, executive dysfunction, probably shouldn't try to abbreviate it, struggle to even start meditating in the first place. So here is the ultimate cheat code I found for finally breaking the cycle. Go to sleep. No, literally. Try doing this before you go to sleep, since when you start falling asleep, your mind naturally starts to calm down, and all of us need to go to sleep eventually, even if your brain is making a ruckus up there. We have a built-in tranquilizing system that forces you to relax, and we're going to take full advantage of that sleepy state to change the way you think. I believe this might also be the reason as to why so many people, including me to be fair, get their work done before they go to sleep, or they suddenly get all of these ideas and motivation to fix their life. It's not that our mind at night gives us magical motivation potions to make us feel this way. It is simply the removal of the negative thoughts, which were holding you back, that causes you to feel what you call motivation. I believe motivation is actually intrinsic to us, and the science seems to agree with me. It's not a feeling we can gain or lose. It's more or less just the ability to keep the same train of thought for a while. In the magical state between being awake and falling asleep, you can really focus on what you want to do tomorrow, and when you wake up, do it as soon as you can. You can essentially reprogram your mind in this half awake, half asleep state. It's extremely powerful. And you might be thinking, but wait, how can I reprogram my brain if you just told me to discard all thoughts that come in? Well, that was just the first step, so you learn how to empty your brain in the first place. And then, you need to determine which thoughts are bad. Which shouldn't be too hard, since they often make you feel terrible about yourself. And I think most of us can deduce that thinking of yourself as a failure won't make you any less of a failure, and this line of thinking adds nothing but guilt and loathing, and a positive way of thinking is, well, actually following your desires. You can take your time with this, but if you master to observe your own thoughts and learn to discard them at will, then you are golden. If you're trapped in your head anyway, you might as well really get to know yourself, and find the source of the thoughts that are blocking you from action. Because here's the thing with people who have executive dysfunction. They aren't lazy, they're paralyzed, meaning they still have the desire to do stuff. And once you don't have those pesky evil thoughts inside your brain, most of our goals are rather achievable, and we've probably done them many times before. I think, oftentimes, the problems of having executive dysfunction are caused by overthinking. This is especially apparent in ADHD, anxiety, and autism, for example, since people with these afflictions need to think about things other people don't need to think about, and it's very easy to overdo it, and the solution to this is also not intuitive at all. Thinking less and setting much simpler goals. You might be asking yourself, if my problems in my life are so vast and my circumstances are so cooked, how will making my goals simpler even work? Well, again, a task done is better than no task done. If you need to write a 10,000 word essay, then writing 100 words in a day is better than writing nothing. This is difficult, but bear with me. We need a fundamental mindset shift of approaching our tasks with a mindset of 1,000 small steps instead of 4 big leaps across a canyon. While it might feel stupid to only write 100 words and be done for the day, if this is the smallest step you can do, then this is just how it is. I myself have fallen into the trap of believing that my biggest problems must be solved with grandiose solutions and a Herculean effort of studying for 12 hours a day and taking cold showers every morning. But in reality, sometimes we just need to study for 15 minutes in a day and then play games for the rest. And then, on top of doing it daily, finish tasks completely, so you don't end up thinking about them. Thinking about tasks you have left to do is draining. Of course, it might take you more energy to do the tasks in the moment, but if you let it hang, it actually takes even more energy to not do it and procrastinate. Our problems are much smaller than we make them out to be. And if you don't get it, that's perfectly fine. You don't fundamentally need to understand how something works for it to work. If you think that this kind of sounds like BS, like, oh, you're just gonna empty your mind to think about this one thing you want to do that you have been wanting to do for ages, but you just can't, and suddenly you're able to just do it? The answer is yes. The actual method for solving executive dysfunction can genuinely be instantaneous, or it might feel this way, since it's such a massive problem, and then one day, it's gone. In theory, you don't even need to go to sleep or meditate. If I told you to close the video right now and start finally cleaning your room or applying for more jobs, there's a chance that you'll actually just be able to do it. And you wanna know why? Well, there's your problem. You don't need to know. That's not how we transform thoughts into actions. It's not by thinking about it, but by doing it. Let's try an exercise here to demonstrate how we can transform our thoughts into actions. I want you to raise your arm. But not like that. Just raise it casually, okay? I hope you're raising it. That probably took you about a second. Now, how did you do that? How did you raise your arm? Sure, it feels like a no-brainer to you. You just raise it. But do you fully understand the biomechanical and neurological processes that take place to send that signal to your arm and make it rise up? You probably don't, and you don't need to know. We don't need to understand how things work for them to work. It's kind of like magic almost. How do we do anything? How do we put our thoughts into words? How do we put our thoughts into art? Every man-made thing you see around you started with a thought. Either conscious or subconscious. A lot of our reality consists of materialized thoughts and ideas. And we can just do this. You can act without fully understanding how or why even. If you can't even get out of bed right now, just imagine putting one foot before the other and then just doing it without doubting yourself or asking why it even matters. If you can move freely, you can act freely. The only barrier that this paralysis is in your mind. Just start with the smallest action you could possibly take, and then let it progress from there. If you can raise your hand, you can hold up half the sky. And you can thank women for holding the other half. Don't overthink it. In fact, think about nothing else than the things you need to do until you've done them. It is paradoxically simple, yet also incredibly difficult and convoluted. Because as I've said before, I'm a chronic overthinker. As Dostoevsky said, thinking is a disease if you do it too much. My reasons for my paralysis were nonsense, but to me, they felt very real, until I just listened to my thoughts, without judgment, and asked some questions. Well, why don't I have the energy to do this right now? How much energy do I need? How am I going to put all of these thoughts into words? None of these individual problems are impossible to solve. And once you make that final step, that step that outruns the tortoise, you're free. Maybe your issue isn't even psychological. It could be physical, like you feel tired all the time, because you have pre-diabetes actually. So, going to the doctor would be a great idea. But you wouldn't find out if you don't start asking yourself, what is holding me back from doing this in the first place? I promise you, every single issue for your executive dysfunction has an answer. It's just that we have to look at the smallest steps we can take, instead of looking at the whole picture, since the weight of the entire problem is too much to bear. Our subconscious is also an incredibly powerful weapon when it comes to taking action. Do you think people who run marathons have to think about each individual step? No, it's automatic. They think about running in a certain direction and they just do it. So can you. Start doing this enough until a lot of the process becomes automated for you. You won't have to start from ground zero each time. But okay, let's say you start doing things, but then you get scared by a particularly complex situation, which throws you into paralysis again. How can you trust yourself to do something that can't be broken into easy steps? Well, there is another secret about humanity as a whole that has helped me massively. The world is made for idiots. Anybody who happens to be an engineer and needs to install safety mechanisms for devices knows this. You don't need to be some sort of genius or super athlete to get things done. The world was made with the sheer stupidity of humanity in mind, because if we didn't foolproof our methods for survival, we'd all be dead by now. 99% of the time, if you want to do anything, there are already precise instructions on how to do the thing online, and if you follow those instructions, you'll get things done. In Russian, there's this saying, that the eyes fear and the hands do. Our mind makes things scary and grandiose because it always has to think about the worst case scenarios to protect you, but in reality, it's often easier than we think. And we just have to do it, as stupid as it sounds. You won't be too dumb to fix yourself or too incompetent. Trust me, you have all the tools available to you to get things done, and you've probably done them before in some capacity. So don't listen to these negative thoughts you might have about yourself as a result of your rampant procrastination. Just observe that these are thoughts that you have, but you don't have to believe them or act on them. With that being said, you are also probably not an expert on this. Would you listen to a random person on the street telling you are doomed because you did too little with your life? Well, you shouldn't, and in this case, that random idiot is just a voice in your head, and you can do this. Not because you're special, but because you're human, and that's all that matters for getting better. Sorry, clankers, if you have executive dysfunction, you need to go back to your master to get fixed. Speaking of which, a professional diagnosis might still help you with this, since another huge breakthrough I had when it comes to getting things done is that you might have ADHD, and I'm not here to diagnose you, just saying. Since people who have ADHD have fundamentally different motivation criteria. People with ADHD have an interest-based nervous system, as some would describe it, meaning things have to be interesting for you to do them in the first place. The tragedy is, even to do interesting things, like posting YouTube videos for example, you have to do boring work to get it done, like editing and writing, or having cool drawings. You need to actually put the pen to paper or put it on the drawing pad. Anyway, there is boring work even in our passions. And you might have an advantage when you start a project, because novelty is another thing that motivates people with ADHD, but it fizzles out eventually. So I wouldn't call it an advantage, just that people with ADHD can start new projects easier at a cost. So the things we are left with are challenging competition, urgency, and extrinsic and intrinsic rewards. Now, I'm gonna keep this short, so you can actually remember this and use it. It's no use explaining it in depth if you can't remember to watch a movie you wanted to for weeks. Try to look at your tasks like challenges you need to conquer, sort of like a video game, and speaking of which, gamifying your tasks helps immensely. Give yourself treats and rewards for doing tasks. If there's no instant gratification, there might as well be no gratification. Long-term gratification sucks for ADHD. I hate it, it's unfair, but you just gotta instantly give yourself a treat as soon as you finish something difficult. We're going to give you the Pavlov doggy effect. Then, the one that I've seen the most results from, but it comes at a cost, urgency. Make yourself feel the pressure with a deadline, for example, so that you can trick your mind into thinking this is super important and needs to be done right now. It's life or death. Do or don't. You don't have any more time. I know this for a fact. If we give ourselves time, we simply procrastinate until we don't anymore. Set deadlines. Set timers. I'm talking psychological warfare.
Set that wretched Apple alarm, and every time it goes off, you'll be reminded of how screwed you are if you don't do the thing right now. If you think about taking breaks, be really, really careful about it. You know how many hours I've lost from breaks? I'd recommend only doing it under supervision. Get someone to keep you in check, because you can just lose your momentum and basically have to start over again. Do you know how often I got close to finishing a project and then taking a break, thinking, I'm gonna do this in like half an hour anyway, so I can relax. Only to forget about it until I literally have no choice but to do it now, basically every time. And I never learn because I keep forgetting the lesson with my dumb evil brain. It might be a bit tedious, annoying, and tiring, but I'll tell you what, I don't think the procrastination is any better. At least you get things done while doing boring work. Pick your poison. Either make yourself feel the urgency of the scenario, depending on the importance of the task, since life or death scenarios fuel us for whatever reason. Take your meds if your doctor gave them to you, and don't forget to take them. That's also something that can happen. Keep thinking about it until it gets done. Genuinely, I wish someone would have told me that if I don't finish my tasks and procrastinate instead, I'll end up in Dante's Inferno. So I'm not doing this to fearmonger. If you are in paralysis, things will get very bad if you don't at least try to get out. Start with the smallest possible step you can, now! But if you're still here watching this video, I do actually have another important point of information that you really need to internalize. So, one of, if not the central issue of executive dysfunction, is that you spend a lot of time in your own head, thinking, observing, while doing next to nothing outside of your own mind. But as we have learned, most actions come from thought first. But you can get stuck in your own thoughts, in more ways than one. And one of those ways is by creating a feeling of productivity in your own head to alleviate the urgency you feel for the task. The illusion of watching productive videos. Imagining yourself doing productive things can actually make you feel similar levels of accomplishment. So you're telling your brain, oh, I'm already working on this, and we're finishing it, even when you're not getting anywhere. It's comparable to going to a stationery shop for office supplies and then feeling productive just for buying the tools which you need to do your job. But while getting the tools is important, you can't just keep getting tools and never using them. Sadly, our brain doesn't really differentiate that much between different types of productivity and how many rewards it gives you for them. Our brains are not game designers. One of the biggest documented functions of the brain is to do as little as possible to survive. It's all about self-preservation, and not thriving necessarily. It also gets worse the more vivid of an imagination you have, since you are able to imagine your fake scenarios much clearer, and as a result, those feelings of urgency disappear. This is very dangerous, and a very slippery slope to go downwards, and it can absolutely destroy your productivity and worsen your executive dysfunction by a large margin, since you end up spending even more time in your head than outside of it. So, this is why I would suggest limiting the amount of self-improvement videos you watch. The best way I found is to watch one and then try out the advice in it as soon as I can. And then, if it was successful or unsuccessful, only then do I watch more. Then, there's also another major pitfall you have to look out for, and that is the fantasy trap. Thinking about the past and how it would be like now if you did things differently. Again, this way of thinking can also evoke emotions of unearned productivity, on top of just being downright toxic to think about, since it is antithetical to our practical reality. We only exist in the present. We make plans for the future in the present. We look back at our past from the present, and every single action we can take or perform comes from, that's right, you guessed it, the present. And we have limited resources, and most importantly, knowledge on how to make the best decisions in the present, so we tend to make what a lot of people would call a mistake, after the fact. We constantly make mistakes, and yes, things could have been different and went another way, but there's literally infinite possibilities, and fantasizing about how things would have been different if your past actions changed is utterly useless, because 1, you can't just apply your new knowledge and experiences on your old self, and 2, the present is the only time we can ever experience or change. If you want to stop your paralysis, you need to completely let go of your past, just nuke it if you need to, and focus solely on the present. I'd genuinely recommend going full scorched earth. If you catch yourself fantasizing about the past again, dip your head in cold water or start doing jumping jacks so you can snap back to reality. Remember, observe your thoughts, but don't engage with the bad ones. Don't engage in the fantasy trap. Keep your mind on the track. Motivation is simply keeping one thought in your head until you do, so focus. And that leads us to our next topic, wanting to do something, but not exactly knowing how to go about it. We can fall into the trap of watching tutorials on how to do things optimally, but then simply lacking the skill to do it the way we theorized about it in our heads. Then we feel bad for not being able to do it perfectly, so we don't do it at all. And the trick to breaking out of that thought loop is to do the things you need to do any way you know, even if it's far from perfect. Hell, even if your methods are trash. Actively doing your task poorly is much better than not doing anything. Inaction gets you nowhere in life. Besides, we tend to optimize our methods along the way, and not instantly know what to do and how to do it. We often make the mistake of watching thousands of tips on the internet and then believing we have the optimal way to do things, that this is how it must be done, but in reality, a lot of these tips only work if you at the very least have some experience with them. If you can only do things one way, then do it that way. For example, if your only method of meeting women relies on approaching them on the street and asking them out, then go for it. Of course, it's generally better to look for a place with common interests, get to know them there, and then ask them out. Again, we're not looking for optimization. We're trying to find the easiest way to get you to start. Once the start becomes easy for you, like, oh, it's no big deal for me to go outside and greet strangers or go for a run, then you can start looking towards optimization. The worst exercise is the one you don't do. Fitness trainers know this, so if the problem lies within your mind, you gotta start using it any way you can. Some tasks are like bench presses. If your mind wasn't made to bench 200 pounds, then you shouldn't start with a 200 pound weight, but reduce it until you can do it. But you won't be able to find out if it is indeed too heavy for you or actually just right until you try to lift it. So, to summarize each step, learn how to do it. If you can't, just do what you can do. If you can't do that, observe yourself, ask what is holding you back until you get to the root of your problem, and focus on one root at a time. Then, keep the things you need to do fresh in your mind, create the desire until you can act on it. Then, while transitioning your thoughts into form, don't overthink it. Make it exist first and fix it later. That's it. This is at least how I deal with it. I really wish I could have shown this video to myself when I was younger. So, I hope it can help you do things now. Now, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe. Join my Discord if you feel like it. And thank you to my patrons, with a special shout out to LeftPadlog. Thank you very much for your support. Got your name right this time as well. And thank you to all of my patrons on screen right now. You can join my Patreon if you feel like supporting me. And you can ask me some questions on there that I will answer as soon as I possibly can. Now, click off YouTube, don't watch my next video until you do the smallest thing you can do right now, and thank me later. Bye bye.